I am Diana Blackwood, 38, a successful real estate investment executive with a portfolio worth $2 million. After 12 years of what I believed was a solid marriage to Marcus, a wealth management advisor, I discovered he had secretly transferred our entire life savings into a private trust account. When I confronted the bank about the unauthorized transfer, their revelation about who actually controlled that trust account left my husband speechless and changed the trajectory of both our lives forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What happened next exposed a web of financial manipulation that had been building for years, but it also revealed strategic capabilities I never knew I possessed. The man who thought he could outsmart a woman who had built her fortune by identifying hidden value in complex real estate transactions was about to learn that his wife was far more formidable than he had ever imagined. Before I share how this discovery transformed not only my financial future, but my understanding of my own strength, let me know in the comments where you are watching from and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about women who turned betrayal into their greatest victory. Understanding the full impact of what I discovered requires appreciating the foundation upon which my life had been carefully constructed over nearly 4 decades. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, as the eldest daughter of Patricia and Robert Mills, 2 individuals whose approach to life would profoundly influence my capacity to navigate the challenge that lay ahead. My mother worked as a senior accountant for a regional construction company, while my father built a successful career as a civil engineer specializing in commercial development projects throughout the Pacific Northwest. From my earliest memories, our household operated according to principles of financial discipline, strategic planning, and meticulous attention to detail that would later prove invaluable in both my professional success and personal crisis management. My parents never made significant financial decisions without extensive research, multiple consultations, and comprehensive risk analysis. Family dinners frequently included discussions about investment strategies, market trends, and the importance of understanding every aspect of any financial commitment before proceeding with major decisions. My father possessed an engineer's methodical approach to problem-solving that emphasized breaking complex challenges into manageable components, analyzing each element systematically, and developing solutions based on evidence rather than emotion or assumption. He would often say that the most elegant solutions emerged from thorough understanding of all variables involved in any situation. This analytical framework became second nature to me through years of observing how he approached everything from household budgeting to major career decisions with the same disciplined methodology. My mother complemented this engineering precision with accounting expertise that provided insight into financial structures, regulatory requirements, and the subtle indicators that revealed the true health of any business or investment opportunity. She taught me to read financial statements with the same attention to detail that others might apply to literature, recognizing that numbers told stories about competence, integrity, and long-term viability that could not be disguised through marketing or presentation. The combination of these influences created a foundation of financial literacy and analytical capability that distinguished me from many of my peers throughout my educational and professional development. While other children received allowances without conditions, my parents required detailed budgets, savings plans, and quarterly reviews of how I allocated my modest resources. These early lessons about money management were presented not as restrictions, but as essential life skills that would enable greater freedom and security in adulthood. My academic journey reflected these foundational influences through consistent excellence in mathematics, economics, and business studies that prepared me for eventual success in real estate investment. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Washington with dual degrees in finance and real estate development, having spent summers working for my father's engineering firm, where I learned to evaluate commercial properties from both financial and structural perspectives. The transition from academic achievement to professional success occurred more rapidly than I had anticipated when I joined Northwest Investment Partners immediately following graduation. The firm specialized in identifying undervalued commercial properties with potential for significant appreciation through strategic improvements, market repositioning, or development opportunities that other investors had overlooked. My ability to combine financial analysis with practical understanding of construction and development costs provided a competitive advantage that senior partners quickly recognized and rewarded. Within 5 years, I had established myself as one of the firm's most successful acquisition specialists, having identified and structured deals that generated over $50 million in profits through strategic property investments across Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. My reputation for thorough due diligence and accurate market timing attracted attention from larger investment firms, but I chose to remain with Northwest Investment Partners because of their commitment to ethical business practices and long-term relationship building rather than short-term profit maximization. The decision to establish my own real estate investment company at age 30 represented both professional ambition and personal values alignment that had been building throughout my career development. Blackwood Properties was founded with $500,000 in personal savings and a strategic plan to focus on mid-market commercial properties that larger firms considered too small, while smaller investors lacked the capital to pursue effectively. The market positioning proved successful beyond my initial projections. My approach to real estate investment emphasized comprehensive market analysis, detailed financial modeling, and strategic partnerships with experienced contractors, property managers, and development specialists who shared my commitment to quality and ethical business practices. Rather than pursuing rapid growth through high-leverage transactions, I built a portfolio of carefully selected properties that generated consistent returns while appreciating steadily over time through systematic improvements and strategic market positioning. The success of this conservative but methodical approach became apparent when the commercial real estate market experienced significant volatility during the economic uncertainty of recent years. While many investors suffered substantial losses through over-leveraged positions or speculative transactions, Blackwood Properties not only maintained stability, but actually expanded its portfolio by acquiring distressed properties from competitors who had pursued more aggressive strategies without adequate risk management. By my 37th birthday, the company's portfolio had grown to include 23 commercial properties across 4 states, with a combined valuation exceeding $2 million in annual revenue streams that provided both personal financial security and capital for continued strategic expansion. The success had been achieved through disciplined analysis, conservative leverage, and systematic reinvestment of profits into carefully selected opportunities rather than lifestyle expenses or speculative investments. This professional achievement was complemented by what I believed to be a strong personal relationship with Marcus Blackwood, whom I had met 7 years earlier during a real estate investment conference in Seattle. Marcus worked as a wealth management advisor for Sterling Financial Services, a prestigious firm that specialized in providing comprehensive financial planning services to high-net-worth individuals and successful business owners throughout the region. Our initial attraction was built upon shared interests in financial markets, investment strategy, and long-term wealth building that created natural conversation topics and mutual respect for each other's professional expertise. Marcus possessed extensive knowledge of portfolio management, tax optimization strategies, and estate planning that complemented my real estate investment focus while providing valuable insights for managing the growing wealth that Blackwood Properties was generating. The courtship period was characterized by thoughtful financial discussions, joint investment research, and collaborative planning for a future that would combine our professional capabilities and shared values about building lasting wealth through disciplined investment strategies. Marcus appeared to genuinely appreciate my business acumen and independent financial success, often seeking my perspective on real estate components of his clients' portfolios and expressing admiration for the strategic approach I had developed. Our marriage 5 years ago was celebrated as a partnership between equals who brought complementary financial expertise to a relationship built upon mutual respect and shared objectives. The wedding itself reflected our practical values through elegant but modest celebration that allocated resources toward our future, rather than expensive demonstration of wealth or status. We purchased a beautiful home in an established neighborhood that offered both comfort and solid investment potential. The early years of marriage appeared to validate the foundation we had established through careful courtship and thorough discussion of our individual and collective financial goals. Marcus supported the continued growth of Blackwood Properties, while managing our personal investment portfolio with apparent skill and attention to detail. We maintained separate business accounts while combining household expenses and long-term savings in joint accounts that seemed to represent true financial partnership. Our financial discussions continued to be characterized by transparency, collaboration, and strategic thinking that reinforced my confidence in our relationship and Marcus's commitment to our shared objectives. He regularly provided detailed reports on our investment performance, tax planning strategies, and retirement projections that demonstrated both professional competence and personal dedication to our financial security and future prosperity. The lifestyle we established reflected conservative spending habits and disciplined saving strategies that enabled continued investment in both business growth and personal financial security. Rather than increasing our expenses in proportion to our growing wealth, we maintained modest living costs while maximizing the capital available for strategic investments that would compound our wealth over time through systematic accumulation rather than lifestyle inflation. This approach had enabled us to accumulate substantial liquid savings in addition to our individual business assets, creating a financial foundation that provided both security and flexibility for pursuing additional investment opportunities. As market conditions warranted, our joint savings account had grown to over $850,000 through systematic contributions from both our professional incomes and disciplined reinvestment of returns from our combined investment portfolio. The discovery that would shatter this carefully constructed life began on a Tuesday morning in September, when I attempted to transfer funds from our joint savings account to cover a time-sensitive real estate acquisition opportunity that had emerged through my professional network. Blackwood Properties had identified a distressed commercial property that could be acquired at a significant discount to market value, but the transaction required immediate proof of funds to secure the purchase agreement before other investors became aware of the opportunity. The electronic transfer system initially appeared to be experiencing technical difficulties when my authorization codes were repeatedly rejected despite multiple attempts using the correct account information and security credentials. After 30 minutes of unsuccessful efforts to access funds that should have been readily available, I contacted our bank's customer service department to resolve what I assumed was a routine technical issue that could be quickly addressed through their internal systems. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The customer service representative's initial response suggested standard troubleshooting, procedures for online banking access problems, but her tone became more serious when she accessed our account information and discovered the source of the authorization failures. "Mrs. Blackwood," she said carefully, "I need to transfer you to our private banking department because there appears to be some unusual activity on your account that requires specialized assistance to resolve." The private banking specialist, who took my call, introduced herself as Jennifer Morrison and explained that she had been reviewing our account activity as part of standard security protocols when she noticed significant irregularities that had triggered internal fraud prevention measures. "Mrs. Blackwood, I need to inform you that your joint savings account shows a complete fund transfer that occurred 3 days ago, moving the entire balance to an external trust account that was not initiated through your online banking credentials." The words initially failed to register as I processed the implications of what she was describing. Our entire life savings, accumulated through years of disciplined investment and careful financial planning, had been transferred without my knowledge or authorization to an account that I knew nothing about. The shock was compounded by confusion about how such a transfer could have occurred without triggering immediate notification through the security systems that were supposed to protect our accounts. Jennifer explained that the transfer had been authorized through Marcus's individual banking credentials and included documentation that appeared to establish legal authority for the transaction. However, the bank's internal security review had identified several irregularities in the authorization process that warranted additional investigation before the funds could be released from the trust account to their ultimate destination. My initial response was to assume that Marcus had initiated some form of investment or financial planning strategy without informing me, perhaps as a surprise, or because he believed the opportunity required immediate action that could not wait for our usual collaborative decision-making process. While this would have represented a significant departure from our established communication patterns, it seemed more plausible than deliberate deception or unauthorized fund transfer. However, Jennifer's next revelation eliminated any possibility of innocent explanation for the transaction. Mrs. Blackwood, the trust account receiving your funds is registered under the name Meridian Estate Trust, and according to our records, the primary beneficiary and account administrator is listed as Rachel Sterling. Are you familiar with this individual or this trust arrangement? The name Rachel Sterling was not only familiar, but deeply troubling in the context of this financial revelation. Rachel worked as Marcus's assistant at Sterling Financial Services and had been a regular presence in our social interactions through company events, professional conferences, and occasional dinners that included business associates. I had always considered her relationship with Marcus to be strictly professional, though I had noticed that their communication seemed more frequent and informal than typical supervisor-employee interactions. The implications of discovering that our life savings had been transferred to a trust account controlled by Marcus's assistant created a sinking sensation that transcended mere financial concern to encompass the possibility that my marriage was built upon deception that I had been too trusting or naive to recognize. The careful financial partnership that I had believed defined our relationship was revealed as potentially fraudulent manipulation, designed to provide Marcus with access to wealth he had not earned through his own efforts. Jennifer continued her explanation while I struggled to process the magnitude of what was being revealed. Mrs. Blackwood, our investigation has uncovered additional information that I believe you should be aware of. The Meridian Estate Trust was established 6 months ago with initial funding from Mr. Blackwood's personal accounts, but the recent transfer represents by far the largest deposit in the trust's history. More significantly, our review of the EI trust documentation reveals that you are not listed as a beneficiary or authorized party with any access to these funds. The systematic nature of the deception became more apparent as Jennifer provided additional details about the trust structure and the authorization process that had enabled Marcus to transfer our joint savings without my knowledge or consent. The legal documentation had been carefully prepared to provide him with exclusive access to funds that he had contributed from our joint account, effectively converting our shared wealth into his individual asset through a financial vehicle that excluded me entirely from any future claims or access. The revelation that this transfer represented the culmination of months of planning rather than an impulsive decision added another layer of betrayal to the financial fraud I was discovering. Marcus had deliberately and systematically prepared to steal our life savings while maintaining the appearance of a loving marriage and collaborative financial partnership. The trust establishment, legal documentation, and authorization procedures had all been arranged without my knowledge, while I continued to believe that we were building our future together. Jennifer's final piece of information provided the most shocking revelation of our conversation, and would ultimately prove to be the detail that transformed this crisis from devastating betrayal into strategic opportunity. Mrs. Blackwood, there is one additional aspect of this situation that you should understand. During our security review, we discovered that the Meridian Estate Trust documentation contains a significant error that affects its legal validity and Mr. Blackwood's authority to access the transferred funds. The error Jennifer described was both technical and profound in its implications for the entire trust arrangement that Marcus had constructed. According to the legal documentation filed with the trust establishment, Rachel Sterling was designated as both the primary beneficiary and the administrative trustee with exclusive authority over fund distribution and account management. However, the identification information provided for Rachel Sterling in the trust documents did not match the personal information on file with Sterling Financial Services for Marcus's assistant. The Rachel Sterling identified in the trust documentation possessed a different Social Security number, residential address, and employment history than the Rachel Sterling who worked as Marcus's assistant. This discrepancy suggested either identity, fraud, or the existence of two different individuals with the same name, either of which created legal complications that prevented the bank from releasing the transferred funds until the identity questions could be resolved through appropriate verification procedures. More significantly, from my perspective, the identity discrepancy had triggered additional security reviews that revealed other irregularities in the trust documentation, including inconsistencies in Marcus's authorization to transfer jointly held funds to an account that excluded me as a beneficiary. The bank's legal department had determined that the entire transaction warranted suspension pending resolution of these multiple irregularities and potential legal violations. Jennifer explained that the combination of identity questions and authorization irregularities meant that our transferred funds were currently frozen in an escrow status, while the bank conducted a comprehensive investigation into the legitimacy of the entire transaction. This freezing of assets created immediate protection for our savings while providing time for me to consult with legal counsel and determine the appropriate response to what appeared to be attempted financial fraud. The phone call with Jennifer concluded with arrangements for me to meet with the bank's private banking team and legal specialists the following morning to review all documentation related to the unauthorized transfer and discuss options for recovering our funds through appropriate legal channels. The immediate crisis of lost savings had been transformed into a strategic opportunity to expose and address the systematic deception that Marcus had attempted to execute. As I ended the call and sat in my office overlooking the Seattle waterfront, the magnitude of what I had discovered began to settle into my consciousness with a mixture of shock, anger, and determination that would guide my response to this betrayal. The husband I had trusted with our financial future had revealed himself as someone willing to steal our life savings while maintaining the pretense of love and partnership. The comfortable life I had built was revealed as fundamentally compromised by deception I had been too trusting to anticipate. Yet the analytical capabilities that had enabled my success in real estate investment were already beginning to assess this crisis as a problem that could be solved through systematic investigation, strategic planning, and disciplined execution of an appropriate response. Marcus had made a critical error in underestimating both my financial sophistication and my capacity for strategic thinking when confronted with threats to my security and welfare. The woman who had built a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio through careful analysis of complex transactions was now facing the most important deal of her life: recovering stolen assets while protecting herself from a man who had systematically betrayed her trust. The skills that had enabled me to identify hidden value in undervalued properties would now be applied to uncovering the full extent of Marcus's deception and developing a comprehensive strategy for protecting my interests. That evening, as I prepared for the most difficult conversation of my marriage, I understood that the discovery of the unauthorized fund transfer represented more than financial betrayal. It was a revelation about the fundamental character of the man I had married and the necessity of protecting myself from someone who had demonstrated willingness to steal our shared wealth while maintaining the facade of a loving partnership. The comfortable assumptions that had guided our marriage were dissolving under the weight of evidence that Marcus viewed our relationship as an opportunity for financial gain rather than genuine partnership. The choice before me was becoming clear. I could either accept this betrayal and attempt to salvage a relationship built upon deception, or I could use my professional capabilities to expose his fraud, and protect the wealth I had worked years to accumulate. The decision was already forming in my mind as I reviewed the financial documents and legal options that Jennifer had outlined during our conversation. Marcus had chosen to wage war against our marriage and my financial security. He was about to discover that he had targeted someone far more capable of strategic warfare than he had ever imagined. The analysis that had enabled me to identify undervalued real estate investments was now focused on identifying every vulnerability in Marcus's attempted theft and every resource available for mounting an effective counterattack. The woman who had built her success through disciplined preparation and strategic thinking was about to apply those same capabilities to the most important challenge of her life. As I prepared for the confrontation that would inevitably follow my discovery, I felt a strange sense of clarity settling over the shock and anger that had initially dominated my response. The analytical mind that had served me well in business was taking control of the situation, and Marcus was about to learn that his attempt to steal our future had awakened capabilities he had never suspected existed. The comfortable life we had built together was ending, but in its place would emerge something far more authentic and ultimately more valuable. A life built upon my own capabilities and achievements, rather than trust in someone who had revealed himself to be fundamentally unworthy of such faith. The betrayal that Marcus intended to destroy me would instead become the catalyst for discovering strengths I never knew I possessed and achieving independence I had never thought to seek. The next chapter of my life was beginning, and it would be written according to my own values and objectives rather than compromised by someone else's deception and greed. Marcus had intended to steal my financial future, but instead he had freed me to build something far better than what we had shared. The trust revelation that was supposed to devastate me would instead become the foundation for the greatest victory of my life. The foundation of my analytical capabilities and strategic thinking had been forged through decades of systematic development that began long before I understood how crucial these skills would become during the greatest crisis of my personal life. The methodical approach to problem-solving that would prove essential in confronting Marcus's betrayal was not something I had developed overnight, but rather the culmination of influences, experiences, and deliberate choices that had shaped my character from childhood through professional maturity. My parents, Patricia and Robert Mills, had immigrated to Portland from rural Montana during the early 1980s economic recession, seeking opportunities that their small farming community could no longer provide. Both possessed advanced degrees that had been underutilized in their previous location, and their decision to relocate represented a calculated risk based on thorough analysis of employment prospects, cost of living considerations, and long-term growth potential in the Pacific Northwest's emerging technology and construction sectors. Robert's engineering background had been developed through practical experience with agricultural equipment and irrigation systems before he completed his formal education at Montana State University. His approach to engineering problems emphasized understanding fundamental principles rather than memorizing standard solutions, a methodology that proved adaptable to the commercial construction projects that became his specialty in Portland. He possessed an intuitive grasp of structural relationships and load distributions that enabled him to identify potential problems before they became expensive failures. Patricia's accounting expertise had been honed through managing complex agricultural finances that required precise tracking of seasonal income variations, equipment depreciation schedules, and commodity market fluctuations. Her transition to construction industry accounting built upon these foundational skills while adding expertise in project cost management, regulatory compliance, and financial analysis for major development projects. She developed a reputation for identifying cost overruns and budget discrepancies before they could compromise project profitability. The household environment they created emphasized intellectual curiosity, systematic analysis, and evidence-based decision-making that would profoundly influence my approach to both professional and personal challenges. Family discussions regularly included examination of current events through multiple perspectives, analysis of financial decisions based on quantifiable criteria, and exploration of complex problems through methodical breakdown into manageable components that could be addressed systematically. My father's engineering perspective contributed a structural approach to problem solving that emphasized understanding relationships between different variables and anticipating how changes in one area might affect other components of any system. He taught me to visualize complex problems as interconnected networks, where solutions required consideration of multiple factors simultaneously, rather than isolated focus on individual elements without regard for broader implications. My mother's accounting discipline provided complementary expertise in quantitative analysis, financial modeling, and risk assessment that emphasized the importance of verifiable data over assumptions or wishful thinking. She demonstrated how numbers revealed patterns and relationships that might not be apparent through casual observation, and how systematic analysis could uncover opportunities or threats that others might overlook through less rigorous examination. The combination of these analytical frameworks created a foundation for strategic thinking that proved invaluable throughout my educational development and professional advancement. Academic challenges were approached through systematic research, multiple perspective analysis, and evidence-based conclusions that emphasized thoroughness over speed and accuracy over convenience. This methodology distinguished me from peers who relied more heavily on intuition or conventional wisdom. My undergraduate studies at the University of Washington were structured to combine theoretical knowledge with practical application through internships, research projects, and case study analysis that provided real-world experience with complex business challenges. The finance curriculum emphasized quantitative analysis techniques, while the real estate development program provided insight into project management, market analysis, and investment evaluation methodologies that would become central to my professional success. The decision to pursue dual degrees reflected my understanding that real estate investment required both financial sophistication and practical knowledge of development processes, regulatory requirements, and market dynamics that affected property values over time. This comprehensive approach distinguished me from competitors who specialized in only one aspect of real estate transactions without understanding the broader context that influenced investment outcomes. My early professional experience at Northwest investment partners provided mentorship from senior colleagues who had developed expertise through decades of successful real estate investment across multiple market cycles. These relationships exposed me to advanced analytical techniques, negotiation strategies, and due diligence processes that went far beyond academic theoretical knowledge to include practical wisdom gained through extensive experience with both successful investments and costly mistakes. The firm's culture emphasized thorough preparation, conservative risk management, and long-term relationship building over short-term profit maximization or speculative investment strategies. This environment reinforced the analytical discipline my parents had instilled while providing practical application opportunities that tested theoretical knowledge against real-world market conditions and competitive pressures. My progression from junior analyst to senior acquisition specialist occurred through demonstrated competence in identifying undervalued properties, structuring complex transactions, and managing multiple projects simultaneously while maintaining attention to detail that prevented costly errors or oversights. The promotion to senior positions came with increased responsibility for mentoring newer employees and contributing to strategic planning processes that shaped the firm's investment direction. The expertise I developed in commercial real estate analysis included sophisticated financial modeling capabilities, market research methodologies, and due diligence processes that enabled accurate evaluation of investment opportunities across different property types, geographic markets, and economic conditions. This analytical framework proved adaptable to various investment scenarios while maintaining consistent standards for risk assessment and return projections. The decision to establish Blackwood Properties represented both professional ambition and personal values alignment that had been developing throughout my career progression. The desire to build something independently while maintaining ethical standards and long-term relationship focus had been influenced by observing both positive and negative examples of business leadership throughout my professional development. The startup process required comprehensive business planning, financial projections, and market analysis that drew upon all the analytical capabilities I had developed through education and professional experience. The initial investment strategy emphasized conservative leverage ratios, diversified geographic exposure, and systematic reinvestment of profits into carefully selected opportunities rather than aggressive expansion or lifestyle spending that might compromise long-term stability. My approach to building the business reflected lessons learned from observing successful and unsuccessful real estate investors throughout my career development. The emphasis on thorough due diligence, conservative financial assumptions, and systematic risk management had been reinforced through witnessing the consequences of overconfidence, inadequate preparation, and speculative investment strategies that created temporary success followed by devastating losses. The relationship with Marcus had initially appeared to complement these professional achievements and personal values through shared interests in financial planning, investment strategy, and wealth building that created natural compatibility and mutual respect. His background in wealth management seemed to provide expertise that would enhance my real estate investment focus, while offering perspectives on portfolio diversification and tax optimization that could improve overall financial outcomes. Marcus possessed impressive credentials from his education at Stanford Business School and his position with Sterling Financial Services, a firm that maintained an excellent reputation for serving high-net-worth clients through comprehensive financial planning and investment management services. His professional presentations at industry conferences demonstrated sophisticated understanding of market dynamics, regulatory environments, and investment strategies that suggested genuine expertise and commitment to client welfare. Our initial interactions during professional networking events and industry conferences had been characterized by thoughtful discussions about investment philosophy, market analysis, and long-term wealth-building strategies that indicated shared values and compatible approaches to financial decision-making. Marcus appeared to appreciate my independent success and analytical capabilities rather than feeling threatened by my professional achievements or financial independence. The courtship process included collaborative analysis of potential investments, joint research into market trends, and discussions about financial goals that suggested genuine partnership potential and mutual respect for each other's expertise and judgment. Marcus seemed to value my perspective on real estate components of his clients' portfolios, while seeking my input on investment opportunities that combined real estate and financial planning considerations. The progression from professional relationship to personal commitment occurred gradually through shared experiences that demonstrated compatibility in values, lifestyle preferences, and long-term objectives that extended beyond purely financial considerations. Marcus appeared to support my business development goals while expressing genuine interest in understanding the analytical processes and market research that drove my investment decisions. Our engagement and marriage planning reflected the systematic approach to decision-making that characterized both our professional lives and personal values. The financial discussions included comprehensive planning for combining our resources, managing our individual business interests, and establishing joint objectives for wealth accumulation and investment strategy that would benefit from our complementary expertise and shared commitment to long-term financial security. The early years of marriage appeared to validate the careful foundation we had established through extensive communication about financial goals, business development plans, and lifestyle preferences that had been thoroughly discussed before making the commitment to share our lives and resources. Marcus demonstrated consistent support for Blackwood Properties' continued growth, while managing our personal investment portfolio with apparent competence and attention to our shared objectives. Our financial partnership had been structured to maintain individual business autonomy while combining household expenses and long-term savings in joint accounts that reflected genuine collaboration and shared responsibility for our financial welfare. The arrangement provided independence for pursuing our respective professional interests while creating alignment around major financial decisions and investment strategies that affected our combined wealth accumulation. The home we purchased, together, represented careful analysis of both lifestyle preferences and investment potential, in a neighborhood that offered quality-of-life benefits while maintaining strong appreciation, prospects based on development trends, school quality, and transportation infrastructure improvements. The decision-making process reflected the analytical approach we both valued while demonstrating our ability to collaborate effectively on major financial commitments. Our investment discussions continued to be characterized by transparency, collaboration, and strategic thinking that reinforced my confidence in our partnership and Marcus's commitment to our shared financial objectives. He regularly provided detailed reports on portfolio performance, tax planning strategies, and retirement, projections that demonstrated both professional competence and personal dedication to our long-term security and prosperity. The lifestyle we established reflected disciplined spending habits and systematic saving strategies that enabled continued investment in both business growth and personal financial security, without compromising either immediate comfort or long-term wealth accumulation goals. Our approach emphasized maximizing capital available for strategic investments, while maintaining reasonable living expenses that supported our professional activities and personal interests. The accumulation of substantial joint savings had occurred through systematic contributions from both our professional incomes and disciplined reinvestment of returns from our combined investment portfolio. The growth of our liquid assets to over $850,000 represented years of careful financial management and strategic decision-making that had created both security and flexibility for pursuing additional investment opportunities as market conditions warranted. This financial foundation had provided the confidence to pursue larger real estate investment opportunities, expand Blackwood Properties' geographic scope, and consider strategic partnerships that could accelerate business growth while maintaining the conservative risk management approach that had characterized my investment philosophy throughout my career development. The professional reputation I had established through successful real estate investments and ethical business practices had created opportunities for collaboration with other investors, developers, and financial professionals who valued competence, integrity, and long-term relationship building over short-term profit maximization or competitive advantage gained through questionable methods. The analytical capabilities that had enabled this professional success were grounded in systematic methodologies for market research, financial analysis, and risk assessment that emphasized evidence-based conclusions over assumptions, comprehensive evaluation over superficial analysis, and long-term strategic thinking over reactive decision-making, based on temporary market conditions or emotional responses to short-term developments. These same analytical frameworks would prove essential for navigating the personal crisis that Marcus's betrayal had created, but in ways that I could never have anticipated during the years when I believed our marriage represented genuine partnership built upon shared values and mutual respect. The systematic approach to problem-solving that had served me well in business would now be applied to the most challenging situation of my personal life. The foundation of trust and collaboration that I had believed characterized our marriage was being revealed as potentially fraudulent manipulation designed to provide Marcus with access to wealth he had not earned through his own efforts. The careful financial partnership that had seemed to validate our relationship was exposed as a sophisticated deception that had enabled systematic theft of our shared resources while maintaining the appearance of loving commitment and mutual support. The discovery of the unauthorized fund transfer represented not only financial betrayal, but a fundamental challenge to my judgment, analytical capabilities, and understanding of the man I had married. The professional success I had achieved through careful evaluation of investment opportunities and systematic risk assessment was being tested by my apparent failure to recognize deception in my most important personal relationship. Yet the same methodical approach that had enabled my professional achievements was already beginning to analyze this crisis as a complex problem that could be solved through systematic investigation, strategic planning, and disciplined execution of an appropriate response. The analytical capabilities that had distinguished me throughout my career would now be focused on protecting my interests and exposing the full extent of Marcus's systematic deception. The transformation from trusting wife to strategic adversary was beginning as I recognized that the foundation of our marriage had been compromised by deception that required comprehensive response rather than attempts at reconciliation or forgiveness that might enable continued financial manipulation. The analytical mind that had built my professional success was now focused on the most important challenge of my life. The morning that would irrevocably transform my understanding of both my marriage and my husband's character began with what appeared to be a routine business opportunity that required immediate financial action. Blackwood Properties had been monitoring the commercial real estate market throughout the Pacific Northwest for several months, seeking acquisition opportunities that met our strict criteria for location, structural condition, and appreciation, potential within acceptable risk parameters. The opportunity that emerged involved a distressed commercial property in downtown Bellevue that had come to my attention through a trusted contact within the regional development community. The building represented exactly the type of undervalued asset that had formed the foundation of my investment strategy. A structurally sound property in an excellent location that was being offered at a significant discount due to the owner's urgent need for liquidity rather than any fundamental defects in the investment proposition. The property consisted of a 6-story office building constructed in the early 1990s with recent renovations to the mechanical systems and common areas that had been completed just prior to the economic disruption that forced the current owner into financial distress. The location provided excellent access to major transportation corridors and was situated within walking distance of established retail and dining amenities that made it attractive to potential tenants across various professional service sectors. My preliminary analysis indicated that the asking price of $8 million represented approximately 70% of the property's fair market value based on comparable sales, current rental rates, and projected appreciation trends for the Bellevue commercial market. The opportunity to acquire the property at such a substantial discount was contingent upon providing proof of funds and executing a purchase agreement within 48 hours, before the listing became widely available to other investors who would inevitably recognize the same value proposition. The acquisition would require approximately $840,000 in cash for the down payment and closing costs, with the balance financed through a commercial mortgage that I had already arranged through my established banking relationships. Our joint savings account contained sufficient funds to complete the transaction without compromising our personal financial security or requiring liquidation of other investments that were performing well within our overall portfolio strategy. The decision to proceed with the acquisition represented standard business practice for Blackwood Properties, following the same analytical framework and due diligence process that had guided previous successful investments. The property met all established criteria for location desirability, structural condition, and financial performance potential, while the discounted price provided the margin of safety that I required for all real estate investments, regardless of apparent market conditions or temporary opportunities. The timing considerations were straightforward but inflexible, as the seller had received multiple inquiries from other investors and was prepared to accept the first qualified offer that included verified proof of funds and commitment to close within 30 days. The competitive environment required immediate action to secure the opportunity before other investors could complete their own analysis and submit competing offers that might exceed our maximum acquisition price. I initiated the fund transfer process through our bank's online system using the standard procedures that Marcus and I had established for accessing our joint savings account for business and personal expenses. The electronic interface initially appeared to function normally, accepting my login credentials and displaying the account overview that showed our current balance and recent transaction history without any indication of irregularities or system problems. However, when I attempted to authorize the transfer of $840,000 to the escrow account designated for the property acquisition, the system repeatedly rejected my authorization codes despite multiple attempts using the correct security information that had functioned properly during previous transactions. The error messages provided no specific explanation for the authorization failures, suggesting only that I should contact customer service for assistance with account access issues. My initial assumption was that the bank's electronic systems were experiencing temporary technical difficulties or security updates that had affected normal account access procedures. Such disruptions occasionally occurred within the banking industry and typically could be resolved quickly through direct communication with customer service representatives who had access to override codes or alternative authorization methods for legitimate account holders. The customer service representative who initially responded to my call approached the issue as a routine technical support matter, requesting verification of my identity and account information before attempting to troubleshoot the online banking access problems. Her tone remained professional and helpful as she guided me through standard procedures for resolving electronic authorization failures, including clearing browser cache, verifying security settings, and attempting the transaction through alternative access methods. However, her demeanor changed significantly when she accessed our account information and discovered the source of the authorization difficulties. The professional confidence in her voice was replaced by careful uncertainty as she reviewed data that clearly indicated something more complex than routine technical problems. After several minutes of silence interrupted only by keyboard activity, she informed me that she needed to transfer my call to the private banking department for specialized assistance. The transfer to private banking immediately indicated that the situation involved more than simple system malfunctions or routine account access issues. Private banking services were reserved for high-net-worth clients facing complex financial matters that required specialized expertise and discretionary handling rather than standard customer service protocols. The necessity of involving this department suggested that our account had been flagged for review due to unusual activity or potential security concerns. Jennifer Morrison, the private banking specialist who accepted my transferred call, introduced herself with the careful professionalism that characterized interactions involving sensitive financial matters. Her initial questions focused on verifying my identity and relationship to the account through detailed information that went beyond standard security protocols to include recent transaction history, account usage patterns, and personal information that confirmed my legitimate access rights. The specific trigger for the security review was a substantial fund transfer that had occurred 3 days earlier, moving the entire balance of our joint savings account to an external destination that was not consistent with our historical transaction patterns. The transfer had been authorized through legitimate banking credentials and included appropriate documentation, but the destination and amount had activated internal monitoring protocols that required human review before the transaction could be completed. Jennifer's revelation that our entire savings balance had been transferred without my knowledge or participation created an immediate emotional response that combined shock, confusion, and growing anger as I processed the implications of what she was describing. The systematic accumulation of wealth that had required years of disciplined saving and strategic investment had been eliminated through a single transaction that I had no knowledge of authorizing or approving. The initial shock was compounded by the realization that such a transfer could not have occurred without Marcus's active participation, as the account required dual authorization for transactions exceeding specified limits that were well below the total amount that had been moved. The security protocols we had established were specifically designed to prevent unauthorized access by requiring both account holders to approve major financial transactions through separate authentication processes. Jennifer continued her explanation while I struggled to comprehend the magnitude of the betrayal that was being revealed. the transfer had been executed using Marcus's individual banking credentials, along with documentation that purported to establish his legal authority to move jointly held funds without my specific consent. However, the bank's security review had identified several irregularities in the authorization process that had prevented the receiving institution from releasing the funds to their ultimate destination. The destination for our transferred savings was identified as the Meridian Estate Trust, a legal entity that had been established 6 months earlier with initial funding from Marcus's personal accounts. The trust structure appeared to be designed for estate planning or asset protection purposes, but our joint savings represented by far the largest deposit in the trust's history and had been transferred under circumstances that differed significantly from the previous smaller contributions. More significantly, from a legal and practical perspective, Jennifer's review of the trust documentation revealed that I was not listed as a beneficiary, trustee, or authorized party with any access rights to the transferred funds. The legal structure had been carefully designed to provide Marcus with control over assets that had been contributed from our joint account, while excluding me entirely from any future claims or access to these resources that I had helped accumulate through years of shared financial planning. The systematic nature of the deception became apparent as Jennifer provided additional details about the trust establishment and the documentation that had been filed to support Marcus's authority to transfer our jointly held assets. The legal preparation had been conducted over several months with careful attention to creating an appearance of legitimate estate planning while actually constructing a mechanism for converting our shared wealth into his individual asset through a financial vehicle that I had no knowledge of or access to. Jennifer's next revelation provided the most shocking and ultimately most important information of our entire conversation. During the bank's security review of the Meridian Estate Trust documentation, investigators had discovered a significant discrepancy in the identification information provided for Rachel Sterling, who was designated as both the primary beneficiary and administrative trustee with exclusive authority over fund distribution and account management. The Rachel Sterling identified in the trust documents possessed personal identification information, including social security number, residential address, and employment history that did not match the information on file for the Rachel Sterling, who worked as Marcus's assistant at Sterling Financial Services. This discrepancy had triggered additional investigation that revealed either identity fraud or the existence of two different individuals with identical names, either of which created legal complications that prevented fund release until the identification questions could be resolved. The implications of this discovery extended far beyond simple clerical errors or coincidental name similarities. If Marcus had used fraudulent identification information to establish the trust, he had committed serious financial crimes that could result in criminal prosecution and automatic invalidation of the entire trust structure. If there were indeed two different Rachel Sterlings involved in the situation, then Marcus's relationship with his assistant might be entirely different from what I had understood, and the trust arrangement might involve individuals I knew nothing about. More immediately important for protecting our financial interests, the identification discrepancy had caused the receiving bank to freeze all trust assets pending resolution of the legal questions surrounding the trust's validity and the proper identification of its intended beneficiaries. Our transferred funds were currently being held in escrow status, while legal authorities investigated the documentation irregularities and potential fraud indicators that had been uncovered during the security review process. Jennifer explained that the combination of identification questions and authorization irregularities meant that our savings were protected from further transfer or distribution while the investigation proceeded. This freezing of assets provided immediate security for our funds, while creating time for me to consult with legal counsel and determine the appropriate response to what appeared to be attempted financial fraud on a substantial scale. The bank's legal department had already begun coordinating with law enforcement agencies and regulatory authorities who specialized in financial fraud investigation, as the evidence suggested potential violations of federal banking regulations and state laws governing fiduciary responsibility and unauthorized asset transfers. The scope of the apparent deception warranted professional investigation beyond what the bank's internal security systems could provide. Jennifer's final recommendation was that I should immediately retain legal counsel specializing in financial fraud and asset recovery to protect my interests during the investigation and ensure that my rights were properly represented throughout the legal proceedings that would likely follow. She also suggested that I should avoid discussing the situation with Marcus until I had received professional legal advice about how to proceed without compromising the investigation or my legal position. The phone call concluded with arrangements for me to meet with the bank's legal specialists and private banking team the following morning to review all documentation related to the unauthorized transfer and discuss options for expediting the asset recovery process. Jennifer provided contact information for the investigating authorities and emphasized that time was critical for preserving evidence and preventing any additional fraudulent activity. As I ended the call and sat in my office overlooking Elliott Bay, the magnitude of the betrayal I had discovered began to settle into my consciousness with a mixture of emotions that ranged from shock and anger to determination and strategic calculation. The comfortable assumptions that had guided my marriage and financial planning were dissolving under the weight of evidence that Marcus had systematically deceived me while maintaining the appearance of loving partnership and shared commitment to our future security. The discovery represented more than financial theft. It constituted a fundamental revelation about the character of the man I had married, and the necessity of protecting myself from someone who had demonstrated willingness to steal our shared wealth while maintaining elaborate pretenses of affection and collaboration. The analytical capabilities that had enabled my professional success were now focused on the most important challenge of my life: recovering stolen assets while protecting myself from continued deception and potential additional financial crimes. The woman who had built a successful real estate investment company through systematic analysis of complex transactions was now facing the ultimate test of her strategic thinking and problem-solving abilities. Marcus had chosen to wage financial warfare against our marriage and my security, apparently believing that he could manipulate someone whose professional success had been built upon identifying hidden risks and developing comprehensive responses to complex challenges. The transformation from trusting wife to strategic adversary was beginning as I recognized that the situation required immediate action to protect my interests and expose the full extent of Marcus's systematic deception. The comfortable life we had built together was ending, but in its place would emerge something far more authentic and ultimately more valuable. A life built upon my own capabilities and achievements, rather than compromised by trust in someone who had proven fundamentally unworthy of such faith. The hours following my conversation with Jennifer Morrison became a period of intense internal examination, as I confronted the devastating reality that my marriage had been built upon systematic deception designed to facilitate the theft of our shared financial resources. The comfortable certainties that had guided my personal and professional decision-making for the past 5 years were dissolving under the weight of evidence that Marcus had viewed our relationship as an elaborate financial scheme rather than genuine partnership based upon mutual affection and shared objectives. The psychological impact of discovering such comprehensive betrayal extended far beyond the immediate financial concerns to encompass fundamental questions about my judgment, analytical capabilities, and understanding of human nature that had previously served me well in complex business transactions. The same methodical approach that had enabled accurate evaluation of real estate investments and identification of hidden risks in commercial properties had apparently failed completely when applied to the most important relationship in my personal life. The internal conflict I experienced during this period was complicated by the necessity of maintaining normal business operations and professional responsibilities while processing the emotional and practical implications of Marcus's systematic deception. Blackwood Properties required continued attention to ongoing projects, client relationships, and market opportunities that could not be postponed while I addressed the personal crisis that threatened to overwhelm my capacity for strategic thinking and effective decision-making. The immediate practical considerations included determining how to respond to Marcus when he returned from his current business trip, whether to confront him directly about the unauthorized fund transfer, and how to protect myself from potential additional financial crimes while gathering evidence that might be necessary for legal proceedings or asset recovery efforts. Each of these decisions carried significant consequences that could either facilitate successful resolution of the crisis or enable Marcus to cause additional damage through continued deception. The stakes involved in my response strategy extended beyond personal financial security to include my professional reputation, business relationships, and future capacity to operate effectively in the commercial real estate industry, where trust and credibility were essential for successful transaction completion. Any public revelation of the fraud Marcus had attempted could affect client confidence in my judgment and analytical capabilities, potentially damaging business relationships that had been developed through years of consistent performance and ethical conduct. The complexity of the situation was further compounded by legal considerations regarding the most appropriate methods for protecting my interests without compromising potential criminal prosecution of Marcus's fraudulent activities. The evidence Jennifer had described suggested violations of federal banking regulations and state laws governing fiduciary responsibility that warranted professional investigation. But my response to the situation could either facilitate or complicate such legal proceedings depending upon the approach I selected. The emotional dimensions of the betrayal created additional challenges for maintaining the analytical objectivity that would be essential for developing an effective response strategy. The anger I felt toward Marcus for his systematic deception was accompanied by profound disappointment in my apparent failure to recognize warning signs that might have been visible to someone with greater emotional intelligence or more suspicious approach to evaluating personal relationships. The sense of personal violation extended beyond financial concerns to encompass questions about the authenticity of our entire relationship and whether any aspect of Marcus's behavior toward me had been genuine rather than calculated manipulation, designed to maintain access to my wealth and business success. The possibility that years of shared experiences, intimate conversations, and collaborative planning had been elaborate performance rather than authentic emotional connection created psychological trauma that complicated rational analysis of available options. The professional pride that had sustained me throughout my career development was being tested by the recognition that my expertise in identifying hidden risks and evaluating complex transactions had been insufficient to protect me from someone who had been systematically deceiving me while sharing my home, my bed, and my most confidential business and personal information. The failure felt particularly acute because financial analysis and risk assessment were supposedly my areas of greatest competence and professional distinction. Yet the analytical framework that had guided my business success was beginning to assert itself over the emotional shock and personal disappointment as I recognized that this crisis represented the most complex and important transaction of my life. The principles that had enabled successful real estate investments, thorough research, systematic planning, strategic timing, and disciplined execution, were directly applicable to protecting my interests and responding effectively to Marcus's attempted financial fraud. The strategic options available to me ranged from direct confrontation that might prompt additional fraudulent activity or evidence destruction, to covert investigation that could gather comprehensive information about the extent of Marcus's deception while preserving legal options for asset recovery and potential criminal prosecution. Each approach offered different advantages and risks that required careful evaluation based upon available information and probable outcomes under various scenarios. The direct confrontation approach would involve immediate disclosure of my knowledge about the unauthorized fund transfer and demand for explanation of Marcus's actions and intentions regarding our relationship and financial partnership. This strategy offered the potential advantage of resolving the situation quickly while testing whether Marcus might be willing to voluntarily restore our stolen assets and provide honest explanation of his motivations and future intentions. However, direct confrontation also carried substantial risks, including the possibility that Marcus would attempt additional financial crimes, destroy evidence of his fraudulent activities, or implement contingency plans for protecting himself from legal consequences while causing maximum damage to my personal and professional interests. His apparent sophistication in establishing the trust structure and authorization documentation suggested careful planning that might include preparations for various response scenarios. The covert investigation approach would involve maintaining the appearance of normal marital relationship while systematically gathering evidence about Marcus's activities, financial arrangements, and potential accomplices who might have assisted in planning or executing the fraud. This strategy could provide comprehensive understanding of the full scope of his deception, while preserving legal options and preventing him from taking additional harmful actions. The disadvantages of covert investigation included the psychological difficulty of maintaining intimate relationship with someone I now knew to be actively betraying me, the risk that Marcus might discover my investigation and respond with escalated fraudulent activity, and the possibility that delayed confrontation might complicate legal proceedings or asset recovery efforts if time-sensitive actions were required to protect my interests. The legal consultation option involved immediately retaining specialized counsel to guide my response strategy, while ensuring that all actions were properly coordinated with law enforcement agencies and regulatory authorities who would be responsible for investigating and prosecuting the apparent financial crimes. This approach offered the advantage of professional expertise and protection from legal complications that might arise from inappropriate response to complex fraud allegations. The potential disadvantages of immediate legal consultation included the financial costs of extensive legal representation, the possibility that formal legal proceedings might become public knowledge that could affect my business relationships, and the risk that legal processes might be lengthy and uncertain while providing limited immediate protection from additional fraudulent activities or financial manipulation. The family considerations added another layer of complexity to the decision-making process, as I evaluated how different response strategies might affect relationships with my parents, business associates, and mutual friends who had witnessed our marriage and might be shocked by revelations about Marcus's character and criminal activities. The social and professional networks we had developed together would inevitably be affected by any public disclosure of fraud allegations and marital dissolution. My parents had invested considerable emotional capital in their relationship with Marcus and their satisfaction with my apparent marital happiness and financial security. They had frequently expressed approval of his professional success and apparent commitment to supporting my business development while contributing to our shared financial objectives. Revealing his systematic betrayal would cause them significant disappointment while potentially creating guilt about their failure to recognize warning signs that might have been apparent to more suspicious observers. The business relationships that Marcus and I had developed jointly through industry networking, professional conferences, and collaborative client services would require careful management to prevent damage to my professional reputation while ensuring that his fraudulent activities did not affect my ability to continue serving existing clients or developing new business relationships. Some clients might question my judgment or analytical capabilities if I had failed to recognize systematic deception by my business partner and spouse. The financial implications of different response strategies extended beyond immediate asset recovery to include potential long-term consequences for my business operations, personal financial security, and future wealth accumulation capacity. The unauthorized transfer of our savings had eliminated the liquid capital that provided flexibility for pursuing time-sensitive investment opportunities and managing unexpected business or personal expenses that might arise during normal operations. The legal costs associated with asset recovery and potential criminal prosecution could consume substantial resources while providing uncertain prospects for complete restoration of our stolen funds, particularly if Marcus had already transferred assets to locations or legal structures that complicated recovery efforts. The complexity of trust law and financial fraud prosecution might require extensive legal representation that could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars without guaranteeing successful outcomes. The opportunity costs of focusing time and energy on responding to Marcus's betrayal would inevitably affect my ability to pursue business development opportunities and manage existing real estate investments that required continued attention to maintain optimal performance. The emotional and practical demands of legal proceedings and marital dissolution would reduce the mental bandwidth available for strategic business decisions and client relationship management. Yet the alternative of accepting Marcus's theft and attempting to preserve our marriage would constitute acceptance of fundamental dishonesty that would compromise my self-respect while enabling continued financial manipulation that could result in additional losses and escalating criminal activity. The pattern of systematic deception he had demonstrated suggested that the unauthorized fund transfer might represent only the initial phase of more comprehensive fraud rather than isolated criminal act. The recognition that Marcus had been planning this betrayal for months while maintaining the appearance of loving partnership indicated sophisticated criminal intent that was unlikely to be satisfied with a single theft, regardless of the substantial amount involved. His establishment of the trust structure and careful documentation of authorization procedures suggested preparation for ongoing financial manipulation rather than opportunistic criminal behavior that might be attributed to temporary personal or financial pressures. The identity discrepancy regarding Rachel Sterling that Jennifer had discovered provided potential leverage for asset recovery, while suggesting that Marcus's criminal activities might extend beyond our marriage to include additional victims or accomplices whose involvement could complicate the legal situation, while providing additional evidence of systematic fraud rather than isolated incident affecting only our relationship and financial arrangements. The analysis of available options and potential consequences was gradually clarifying into recognition that the situation required comprehensive response that prioritized asset protection and evidence preservation while maintaining legal flexibility for pursuing multiple avenues of recovery and protection. The analytical framework that had guided successful real estate investments was applicable to this crisis through systematic evaluation of risks and opportunities while developing strategic response that maximized favorable outcomes. The transformation from shocked victim to strategic adversary was beginning as I recognized that Marcus had fundamentally miscalculated in targeting someone whose professional success had been built upon identifying hidden risks and developing comprehensive responses to complex challenges. The methodical approach that had enabled accurate evaluation of commercial properties and identification of investment opportunities would now be applied to protecting my interests while exposing the full extent of his systematic deception. The internal conflict between emotional devastation and analytical determination was resolving in favor of strategic action, as I understood that this crisis represented the ultimate test of capabilities that had been developed through decades of systematic preparation and professional challenge. The woman who had built a successful business through disciplined analysis and strategic thinking was about to apply those same capabilities to the most important challenge of her life. The resolution of my internal conflict crystallized during the early hours of the following morning as I sat in my home office reviewing financial documents and legal options, while Marcus remained unaware that his systematic deception had been discovered. The analytical process that had consumed the previous 18 hours had methodically eliminated emotional responses in favor of strategic calculation, transforming personal devastation into professional determination to protect my interests. Through comprehensive action, rather than reactive decision-making driven by anger or disappointment. The decision-making framework that emerged from this analysis emphasized three fundamental principles that had guided successful real estate investments throughout my career development. First, accurate assessment of current position and available resources provided the foundation for realistic strategic planning. Second, comprehensive evaluation of risks and opportunities enabled identification of optimal response strategies that maximized favorable outcomes while minimizing exposure. 2 additional losses. Third, disciplined execution of selected strategy through systematic action steps ensured that theoretical planning translated into practical results that achieved stated objectives. The assessment of my current position revealed both vulnerabilities and strengths that would influence the effectiveness of different response strategies. The primary vulnerability involved the temporary loss of liquid capital that had been transferred to the fraudulent trust account, limiting my immediate financial flexibility while creating pressure to recover these assets quickly to maintain normal business operations and personal financial security. The unauthorized transfer had eliminated the capital reserves that provided stability during market fluctuations or unexpected business challenges. However, the strength of my position was substantial and provided multiple avenues for protecting my interests while pursuing asset recovery through appropriate legal channels. The business assets of Blackwood Properties remained entirely under my control and provided ongoing revenue streams that could sustain both personal expenses and legal costs associated with fraud prosecution and asset recovery efforts. The real estate portfolio continued to generate rental income and appreciation that maintained my financial independence regardless of the outcome of proceedings related to the stolen savings. More significantly, my professional reputation and analytical capabilities provided credibility with legal authorities, banking institutions, and potential witnesses whose cooperation would be essential for successful prosecution of Marcus's fraudulent activities. The systematic approach that had characterized my business development created comprehensive documentation of our financial arrangements, investment strategies, and communication patterns that could support legal proceedings, while demonstrating the legitimate nature of the assets Marcus had attempted to steal. The evaluation of available response strategies had clarified that the most effective approach required immediate legal consultation combined with systematic evidence gathering that would support both civil asset recovery and potential criminal prosecution of the fraud Marcus had committed. This strategy offered the advantage of professional guidance for navigating complex legal requirements while preserving all available options for protecting my interests and preventing additional criminal activity. The decision to pursue comprehensive legal response was reinforced by recognition that Marcus's sophistication in establishing the trust structure and authorization documentation indicated criminal capabilities that posed ongoing threats to my financial security if not addressed through appropriate legal intervention. The systematic nature of his deception suggested careful planning and potential preparation for additional fraudulent activities that could cause escalating damage if not prevented through decisive action. The catalyst that transformed analytical planning into committed action occurred when I discovered additional evidence of Marcus's deception while reviewing our joint financial records in preparation for the legal consultation Jennifer had recommended. The examination of bank statements, investment account summaries, and insurance policies revealed a pattern of unauthorized transactions and account modifications that extended far beyond the trust fund transfer to encompass systematic financial manipulation that had been occurring for months without my knowledge. The additional evidence included modification of beneficiary designations on our life insurance policies, establishment of individual investment accounts using funds transferred from our joint holdings, and authorization of financial advisory services for accounts that I had no knowledge of creating or funding. The scope of these unauthorized activities demonstrated that the trust fund transfer represented only the most recent and substantial component of comprehensive financial fraud that had been systematically implemented while Marcus maintained the appearance of collaborative financial partnership. The discovery of this broader pattern of deception eliminated any remaining consideration of attempting to resolve the situation through direct confrontation or marital counseling that might address relationship issues while preserving our financial partnership. The evidence clearly demonstrated that Marcus had been systematically stealing our assets while implementing elaborate deception to prevent detection of his criminal activities until he could complete whatever ultimate objective had motivated this comprehensive fraud. The emotional impact of discovering the full extent of Marcus's betrayal was profound, but served to crystallize my determination to respond with the same systematic precision that he had employed in planning his deception. The anger I felt was being channeled into strategic energy that would fuel the disciplined effort required to expose his criminal activities while protecting my interests through appropriate legal proceedings and asset recovery efforts. The commitment to pursue comprehensive legal action was formalized through immediate contact with Patricia Hendricks, a partner at Morrison, Hendricks & Associates, a firm that specialized in financial fraud prosecution and asset recovery for high-net-worth individuals who had been victimized by sophisticated financial crimes. Patricia possessed extensive experience with trust law, banking fraud, and complex asset tracing that would be essential for recovering the stolen funds while ensuring appropriate criminal prosecution of Marcus's activities. The initial consultation with Patricia confirmed that the evidence I had discovered provided strong foundation for both civil asset recovery and criminal fraud prosecution that could result in complete restoration of stolen funds, along with additional damages and potential imprisonment for Marcus depending upon the scope of criminal activity that investigation might reveal. The identity discrepancy regarding Rachel Sterling that Jennifer had identified created additional leverage for asset recovery while suggesting possible involvement of additional co-conspirators or victims. Patricia's assessment of the legal situation emphasized that immediate action was essential for preserving evidence and preventing Marcus from implementing contingency plans that might include additional asset transfers, evidence destruction, or flight to jurisdictions that would complicate prosecution efforts. The sophistication of the fraud Marcus had committed suggested awareness of legal vulnerabilities and possible preparation for various response scenarios that could be implemented if his deception was discovered. The strategic framework that Patricia recommended emphasized coordinated action across multiple legal and investigative channels that would maximize pressure on Marcus while preserving all available options for asset recovery and criminal prosecution. This approach included immediate communication with law enforcement agencies, coordination with banking authorities, forensic accounting investigation, and civil litigation that would freeze Marcus's assets while building comprehensive case for criminal prosecution. The decision to proceed with this comprehensive legal strategy required substantial financial commitment for legal fees, investigative costs, and potential court expenses that could extend over several years depending upon the complexity of the case and Marcus's response to the legal action. However, the alternative of accepting the theft and attempting to rebuild our financial position without pursuing legal remedies would constitute acceptance of criminal behavior while enabling Marcus to retain the benefits of his fraudulent activities. The professional and personal stakes involved in this decision extended beyond immediate financial considerations to encompass fundamental questions about integrity, justice, and the responsibility of individuals with resources and capabilities to resist criminal exploitation rather than accepting victimization as unavoidable cost of trusting personal relationships. The analytical capabilities that had enabled my business success created both opportunity and obligation to respond effectively to sophisticated criminal activity. The commitment to pursue legal action was reinforced by understanding that my response would likely influence the outcomes for other potential victims of similar fraud, while contributing to legal precedents that could protect future targets of sophisticated financial crimes. The resources and expertise I could bring to this prosecution might prevent additional victimization while ensuring that criminal behavior faced appropriate consequences rather than profitable outcomes that encouraged continued fraudulent activity. The practical implementation of this decision required immediate action to secure evidence, coordinate with legal authorities, and maintain the appearance of normal marital relationship while systematic investigation proceeded. The covert evidence gathering that Patricia recommended would provide comprehensive understanding of Marcus's activities, while preventing him from implementing defensive measures that could complicate asset recovery or criminal prosecution efforts. The psychological preparation for this commitment involved accepting that the comfortable life I had shared with Marcus was ending permanently while embracing the challenge of rebuilding my personal relationships and financial arrangements according to authentic values rather than compromised by deception and criminal activity. The transformation from trusting wife to strategic adversary was being completed through conscious choice to prioritize justice and self-protection over relationship preservation and conflict avoidance. The strategic advantage I possessed through early discovery of Marcus's fraud provided opportunity to control the timing and circumstances of legal action while gathering evidence that could ensure successful prosecution and complete asset recovery. The identity discrepancy that had triggered bank security review created leverage that Marcus was unaware of while providing legal authorities with clear evidence of fraudulent documentation that supported criminal charges. The coordination with banking authorities that Patricia arranged provided additional protection for remaining assets, while ensuring that Marcus could not complete additional unauthorized transfers or implement contingency plans that might have been prepared for various response scenarios. The freezing of trust assets that had already occurred provided immediate security, while legal proceedings established permanent protection and asset recovery mechanisms. The commitment to this comprehensive response strategy represented recognition that the situation required complete dedication of professional capabilities and personal resources to achieve successful outcome, while preventing Marcus from causing additional damage through continued criminal activity. The analytical framework that had guided successful real estate investments was being applied to the most important transaction of my life, with determination to achieve complete victory rather than partial resolution that might enable continued exploitation. The decision point had been reached, and the commitment made to pursue systematic legal action that would expose the full extent of Marcus's deception while protecting my interests through appropriate criminal prosecution and civil asset recovery. The transformation from victim to strategic adversary was complete, and the methodical implementation of comprehensive response strategy would demonstrate that targeting someone with professional expertise in complex financial analysis had been a fundamental miscalculation that would result in complete exposure and appropriate legal consequences. The analytical capabilities that Marcus had apparently dismissed or underestimated were about to be applied with complete focus and unlimited determination to ensure that his sophisticated fraud resulted in complete failure while providing legal precedent and investigative expertise that could protect future potential victims from similar criminal exploitation. The woman who had built successful business through systematic analysis and strategic planning was about to demonstrate that these same capabilities could achieve complete victory when applied to protecting fundamental interests from criminal attack. The commitment to legal action was irreversible and comprehensive, representing the culmination of analytical process that had transformed personal betrayal into professional challenge that would be addressed through systematic application of capabilities that had been developed through decades of successful business development and strategic thinking. The comfortable assumptions that had characterized our marriage were permanently dissolved, replaced by clear understanding of the criminal nature of Marcus's activities and absolute determination to ensure appropriate legal consequences while achieving complete asset recovery and protection of future interests. The strategic framework was established, and the commitment was absolute to pursue comprehensive legal response that would demonstrate the fundamental error Marcus had made in targeting someone whose professional success had been built upon identifying hidden risks and developing systematic responses to complex challenges. The most important transaction of my life was beginning, and every resource and capability I possessed would be dedicated to ensuring complete success while protecting other potential victims from similar criminal exploitation. The execution of my comprehensive legal strategy commenced immediately following the commitment to pursue systematic action against Marcus's fraudulent activities. The implementation required precise coordination between multiple legal and investigative channels, while maintaining operational security that would prevent Marcus from discovering my actions until the legal framework was sufficiently established. to protect my interests from potential retaliation or additional criminal activity. Patricia Hendricks had emphasized the critical importance of maintaining absolute secrecy during the initial phases of legal action to preserve the strategic advantages that early discovery of the fraud had provided. Marcus's sophistication in AI, establishing the trust structure and implementing unauthorized financial transactions, suggested significant criminal capabilities that might include contingency plans for various response scenarios, including the possibility that his deception could be discovered before he completed whatever ultimate objectives had motivated this comprehensive theft. The first priority involved securing all available evidence while ensuring that Marcus could not access or destroy documentation that would be essential for successful prosecution and asset recovery. This evidence preservation required systematic copying of financial records, communication logs, computer files, and physical documents that could demonstrate the pattern of unauthorized activities while establishing the timeline and methods Marcus had employed to implement his systematic deception. The forensic accounting investigation that Patricia arranged through her firm's partnership with specialized financial investigators provided professional expertise in tracing complex asset movements and identifying hidden financial relationships that might not be apparent through conventional analysis. The investigation would examine all financial accounts, investment holdings, insurance policies, and business arrangements that Marcus had access to during our marriage to determine the full scope of unauthorized activities and identify assets that could be recovered through appropriate legal proceedings. The coordination with federal law enforcement agencies required careful presentation of evidence that demonstrated violations of banking regulations, wire fraud statutes, and identity theft laws that fell within federal jurisdiction for criminal prosecution. The identity discrepancy regarding Rachel Sterling that had triggered the initial bank security review provided clear evidence of fraudulent documentation that supported federal charges, while creating leverage for comprehensive investigation of Marcus's activities across multiple jurisdictions. The communication with banking authorities extended beyond our primary financial institution to include examination of accounts at other banks, where Marcus might have established unauthorized relationships or transferred assets to avoid detection. The systematic nature of his deception suggested careful planning that might include diversification of criminal activities across multiple financial institutions to complicate investigation and asset recovery efforts. The civil litigation strategy involved immediate filing of asset freezing orders that would prevent Marcus from accessing or transferring any jointly held property, while legal proceedings established permanent protection mechanisms and damage assessments. The civil action would proceed parallel to criminal investigation, while providing independent avenue for asset recovery that did not depend upon the timing or outcomes of criminal prosecution efforts. The professional coordination required to implement this comprehensive strategy demanded exceptional attention to detail and communication management to ensure that various legal and investigative activities supported rather than interfered with each other. Patricia's experience with complex financial fraud cases provided essential guidance for managing multiple concurrent proceedings while maintaining focus on the fundamental objectives of asset recovery and criminal prosecution. The operational security measures necessary during this implementation phase required significant modifications to my normal routines and communication patterns to prevent Marcus from detecting unusual activities that might prompt him to implement defensive measures. These precautions included conducting all legal consultations and investigative meetings at locations away from our home and business offices, using secure communication channels for sensitive discussions, and maintaining normal social and professional interactions that would not raise suspicions about changes in our relationship dynamics. The psychological demands of maintaining this operational security while processing the emotional impact of discovering Marcus's systematic betrayal created significant stress that required careful management to preserve my effectiveness during this critical period. The necessity of continuing normal marital interactions while possessing knowledge of his criminal activities demanded exceptional emotional discipline and strategic thinking to avoid revealing my awareness of his deception before legal protections were properly established. The business continuity considerations required careful balancing of attention between the legal proceedings and ongoing management of Blackwood properties to ensure that client relationships and investment performance were not compromised by the personal crisis that was consuming increasing amounts of time and mental energy. The real estate portfolio required continued oversight and strategic decision-making that could not be postponed while addressing the fraud that Marcus had committed against our personal financial arrangements. The timeline for implementing various components of the legal strategy was driven by multiple factors, including the complexity of evidence gathering, coordination requirements between different legal and investigative agencies, and the need to maintain operational security while building comprehensive case for both criminal prosecution and civil asset recovery. Patricia estimated that the initial phases of legal action would require approximately 60 days to complete, while establishing permanent protection mechanisms that would prevent Marcus from causing additional damage. The financial implications of this comprehensive legal strategy extended beyond immediate costs for legal representation and investigative services to include potential long-term consequences for business operations and personal financial arrangements that would be affected by the extended legal proceedings. However, the alternative of accepting Marcus's theft without legal response would constitute permanent loss of substantial assets, while enabling him to benefit from criminal activities that could encourage continued fraudulent behavior. The strategic advantages that early discovery of the fraud had provided were being systematically leveraged through careful timing of legal actions and evidence presentation that would maximize pressure on Marcus while minimizing opportunities for him to implement defensive measures or escape appropriate legal consequences. The identity discrepancy that had initially protected our assets from further transfer was being developed into comprehensive evidence of systematic fraud that would support maximum criminal penalties and civil damages. The professional relationships that I had developed throughout my real estate investment career provided additional resources for implementing the legal strategy through referrals to specialized service providers, expert witnesses, and potential character references who could support my credibility during legal proceedings. These relationships also provided emotional support and practical assistance during this challenging period, while maintaining confidentiality about the sensitive legal matters that were proceeding. The documentation of Marcus's activities revealed increasingly sophisticated criminal behavior that extended far beyond the trust fund transfer to encompass systematic manipulation of multiple financial accounts and legal relationships that had been carefully designed to avoid detection while maximizing his access to assets that he had not legitimately earned. The evidence suggested years of planning rather than opportunistic criminal behavior, prompted by temporary financial pressures or personal problems. The pattern of unauthorized activities included not only direct theft of jointly held assets, but also strategic positioning for future financial manipulation through modification of legal documents, establishment of unauthorized accounts, and cultivation of professional relationships that could facilitate additional criminal activities. The comprehensive nature of his deception indicated criminal intent that extended beyond our marriage to encompass broader objectives that might include additional victims or ongoing fraudulent enterprises. The legal framework that Patricia was constructing provided multiple avenues for addressing different aspects of Marcus's criminal activities while ensuring that successful prosecution of any individual component would not preclude additional legal action if evidence revealed additional crimes or victims. This comprehensive approach maximized the likelihood of complete asset recovery while establishing legal precedents that could protect future potential victims from similar sophisticated financial fraud. The investigative resources that were being deployed included sophisticated technology for tracing electronic financial transactions, professional expertise in analyzing complex legal documents and corporate structures, and coordination with regulatory authorities who possessed specialized knowledge of banking fraud and identity theft crimes. The scope of investigation was designed to uncover all aspects of Marcus's criminal activities while building irrefutable evidence for successful prosecution. The strategic communication plan that Patricia developed included coordination with media relations specialists who could manage potential publicity if the case became public knowledge while protecting my privacy and business relationships from unnecessary disruption. The plan also included preparation for potential retaliation attempts by Marcus if he discovered the legal proceedings before they were sufficiently advanced to provide complete protection from additional criminal activities. The personal security considerations became increasingly important as the scope of Marcus's criminal capabilities became apparent through the investigation. Patricia recommended consultation with personal security specialists who could assess potential threats and implement appropriate protective measures if Marcus's response to legal action included attempts at intimidation or physical retaliation against me or potential witnesses who might cooperate with the prosecution. The family communication strategy required careful consideration of how and when to inform my parents about the situation while protecting them from potential retaliation, while ensuring that they understood the serious nature of the legal proceedings and the need for absolute confidentiality until the case was resolved. Their emotional investment in our marriage and their relationship with Marcus would make this disclosure particularly difficult, while their support would be essential during the extended legal proceedings. The business protection measures included comprehensive review of all corporate security arrangements to ensure that Marcus could not access business assets or confidential information that might be used for additional criminal activities or to complicate the legal proceedings. The systematic nature of his deception suggested sophisticated understanding of financial systems that might include knowledge of vulnerabilities in business operations that could be exploited for criminal purposes. The coordination with banking. Authorities had revealed additional irregularities in other financial institutions where Marcus had established relationships that appeared to be designed for facilitating unauthorized asset transfers or creating alternative funding sources for activities that were not disclosed to me during our marriage. These discoveries reinforced the assessment that his criminal activities extended far beyond our personal financial arrangements to encompass broader fraudulent schemes. The forensic analysis of electronic communications had uncovered evidence of coordination with other individuals who might have assisted in planning or implementing various aspects of the fraud that Marcus had committed. These potential co-conspirators included professional contacts at financial service firms, legal document preparation services, and possibly other individuals who had been victimized by similar fraudulent schemes that followed comparable methods and organizational structures. The legal strategy was being modified continuously as new evidence revealed additional aspects of Marcus's criminal activities, while creating opportunities for enhanced prosecution and asset recovery that had not been apparent during the initial assessment of the situation. The systematic approach that Patricia employed ensured that these modifications strengthened rather than complicated the overall legal framework, while maintaining focus on the fundamental objectives of complete asset recovery and appropriate criminal punishment. The psychological preparation for the eventual confrontation with Marcus required careful consideration of various scenarios that might emerge when he discovered the legal proceedings or was formally notified of criminal charges that were being prepared against him. His response could range from cooperation and asset restoration to aggressive legal defense and potential escalation of criminal activities designed to cause maximum damage before facing inevitable legal consequences. The timeline for Direct E. Confrontation was being determined by the progress of evidence gathering and legal preparation that would ensure maximum advantage when Marcus became aware of the comprehensive case being built against him. Patricia's experience with similar cases suggested that maintaining the element of surprise until legal protections were fully established would maximize the likelihood of successful asset recovery, while minimizing opportunities for Marcus to cause additional damage. The strategic framework was designed to accommodate various possible responses from Marcus, while maintaining multiple avenues for achieving the fundamental objectives of asset recovery and criminal prosecution, regardless of his cooperation or resistance to legal proceedings. This flexibility ensured that successful outcomes did not depend upon his voluntary compliance with legal requirements or honest disclosure of his criminal activities and hidden assets. The professional investigation was revealing the sophisticated nature of Marcus's criminal enterprise, while providing evidence that would support maximum criminal penalties and civil damages that could exceed the amount of assets that had been directly stolen from our accounts. The scope of his fraudulent activities suggested systematic criminal behavior that warranted severe legal consequences, while creating opportunities for substantial additional recovery through civil proceedings. The commitment to pursue this comprehensive legal strategy had transformed from reactive response to discovered betrayal into proactive campaign for justice that would protect not only my interests, but also contribute to legal precedents and investigative expertise that could prevent similar victimization of other potential targets. The analytical capabilities that had enabled my business success were being applied with complete focus to ensure that Marcus's sophisticated fraud resulted in complete legal failure and appropriate criminal consequences. The implementation of this strategy represented the culmination of systematic preparation and strategic thinking that would demonstrate the fundamental error Marcus had made in targeting someone whose professional expertise included identification of complex risks and development of comprehensive responses to sophisticated challenges. The woman who had built successful business through disciplined analysis was about to achieve complete victory in the most important legal battle of her life, while contributing to protection of future potential victims from similar criminal exploitation. The strategic advantages continued to accumulate as evidence gathering revealed additional aspects of Marcus's criminal activities, while legal preparations established increasingly secure foundations for successful prosecution and complete asset recovery. The identity discrepancy that had initially triggered bank security review was being developed into comprehensive evidence of systematic fraud that would support maximum legal consequences, while ensuring that criminal behavior faced appropriate punishment rather than profitable outcomes. The coordinated legal action was proceeding according to schedule, while maintaining operational security that preserved strategic advantages and prevented Marcus from implementing defensive measures that could complicate prosecution or asset recovery efforts. The systematic approach that Patricia employed ensured that every aspect of the case was being developed with maximum effectiveness, while preparing for various possible response scenarios that Marcus might attempt when he discovered the comprehensive legal action being taken against him. The professional investigation had revealed evidence of criminal activities that extended far beyond the initial trust fund transfer to encompass systematic financial fraud that had been carefully planned and implemented over extended periods, while maintaining elaborate deception about the true nature of our financial relationship. The scope of these discoveries reinforced the assessment that pursuing comprehensive legal action represented the only appropriate response to criminal behavior of this sophistication and magnitude. The transformation from victim to strategic prosecutor was nearing completion, as legal preparations approached the point where direct action against Marcus could proceed with maximum likelihood of success, while providing complete protection from potential retaliation or additional criminal activities. The analytical framework that had guided successful real estate investments was achieving comparable results when applied to protecting fundamental interests from sophisticated criminal attack, while ensuring that justice prevailed over elaborate deception and systematic theft. The commitment to this comprehensive response had evolved into recognition that the situation represented opportunity to demonstrate that professional expertise and systematic preparation could achieve complete victory against sophisticated criminal activity while establishing legal precedents that would protect future potential victims from similar exploitation. The methodical approach that characterized my business development was being applied with unlimited determination to ensure that Marcus's attempted theft resulted in complete exposure and appropriate legal consequences that would serve as permanent deterrent to similar criminal behavior. The strategic implementation was proceeding with precision and effectiveness, that reflected years of professional development and analytical capability being focused on the most important challenge of my life. The comfortable assumptions that had characterized our marriage were permanently replaced by clear understanding of criminal intent and absolute commitment to achieving complete legal victory while protecting other potential victims from similar sophisticated financial fraud. The woman who had built successful business through strategic thinking and systematic execution was about to demonstrate that these same capabilities could achieve total triumph when applied to defending fundamental interests against criminal exploitation. The systematic implementation of legal action against Marcus had been proceeding with remarkable efficiency for 3 weeks when the first signs emerged that my carefully maintained operational security might be compromised. The discovery came through an unexpected source that highlighted both the sophistication of Marcus's criminal network and the necessity of maintaining absolute vigilance during complex legal proceedings involving individuals with significant financial expertise and professional connections. The initial warning arrived through Jennifer Morrison, the private banking specialist who had first revealed the unauthorized fund transfer and the identity discrepancy that had triggered the bank security review. During our regularly scheduled consultation regarding the frozen trust assets and ongoing investigation, Jennifer mentioned that her department had received several inquiries from financial professionals claiming to represent my interests in matters related to the Meridian Estate Trust and the disputed fund transfers. These inquiries had been presented as routine follow-up communications from my legal representatives seeking clarification about documentation requirements and asset release procedures. However, Jennifer's experience with financial fraud cases had prompted her to verify the authenticity of these communications through direct contact with Patricia Hendricks, who confirmed that her firm had made no such inquiries and that all official communications were being conducted through established channels with appropriate authorization and documentation. The revelation that unknown individuals were attempting to gather information about the legal proceedings while claiming to represent my interests created immediate concern about potential intelligence gathering by Marcus or his associates designed to determine the scope of my knowledge about his criminal activities and the legal strategies being employed to address them. The sophistication of these inquiries suggested professional expertise in financial fraud and legal procedures that exceeded what Marcus might possess individually. Patricia's immediate response to this development included comprehensive review of all communication security protocols while implementing enhanced operational security measures designed to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive information about the legal proceedings. The measures included verification procedures for all external communications, encrypted communication channels for sensitive discussions, and expanded monitoring of potential surveillance or intelligence gathering activities that might compromise the strategic advantages we had maintained. The security enhancement process revealed additional evidence that Marcus's criminal activities might involve organized cooperation with other individuals possessing specialized expertise in financial fraud, legal document preparation, and possibly electronic surveillance or information gathering techniques. The systematic nature of the intelligence gathering attempts suggested criminal capabilities that extended far beyond individual financial deception to encompass coordinated criminal enterprise with sophisticated operational methods. The discovery of potential organized criminal involvement required immediate consultation with federal law enforcement agencies that possessed specialized expertise in complex financial fraud and organized criminal activities. The case was assigned to Special Agent Sarah Chen of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Section, whose experience with sophisticated fraud investigations provided essential guidance for protecting the ongoing legal proceedings. While gathering evidence of broader criminal activities, Agent Chen's initial assessment confirmed that the intelligence gathering attempts demonstrated characteristics consistent with organized financial fraud operations that typically involved multiple individuals with complementary criminal expertise, including identity theft, document fraud, electronic surveillance, and money laundering techniques. The coordination of these specialized capabilities suggested criminal organization rather than individual opportunistic behavior, which significantly elevated the stakes and complexity of the legal proceedings. The expanded investigation that Agent Chen initiated revealed evidence of electronic surveillance activities that had been targeting both my personal communications and business operations for several weeks prior to my discovery of the trust fund transfer. The surveillance included monitoring of email communications, telephone conversations, and possibly physical observation of my movements and meetings that could have provided Marcus with advance warning of any unusual activities or changes in my normal routines. The realization that I had been under sophisticated surveillance while implementing the legal strategy created profound concern about what information Marcus might have obtained about my activities and intentions. The operational security measures that Patricia and I had employed might have been insufficient to prevent detection of our legal preparations, potentially compromising the strategic advantages that early discovery of the fraud had initially provided. However, Agent Chen's analysis of the surveillance evidence suggested that while my communications and activities had been monitored, the criminal organization had not yet identified the specific legal strategies being employed or the full scope of evidence that had been gathered regarding Marcus's fraudulent activities. The intelligence gathering attempts appeared to be exploratory rather than responsive to specific threats, suggesting that complete operational compromise had not yet occurred. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.